Mr. Alford acknowledged that it was his signature on the purchasing document for the vehicle. And I'll come back to this part when we get the history and characteristics of Mr. Alford, but Mr. Alford made some statements in the financing application for that vehicle that were not true with respect to his employment. And so days later, the dealership reached out to Mr. Alford to return the vehicle, which ultimately he did on August 4th, but
TV.
not before using the vehicle.
You can see. I ain't know.
Mr. Alford.
Yeah.
This is John Somerville, your lawyer. You're in the right place now. Just sit tight, okay?
Okay.
That's all I heard. You can see. I ain't know.
Mr. Alford.
Yeah.
This is John Somerville, your lawyer. You're in the right place now. Just sit tight, okay?
Okay.
This is Jenny. Is the defendant on the line yet?
Yes.
Oh, Mr. Alford, you're on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you so much. And we apologize for the mishap. Okay, we will go ahead and start the hearing. Thank you so much.
All right.
United States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois is now in session. The Honorable M. David Weissman presiding. Please be seated and come to order. Case number 21-CR-618, USA versus Tacarlos Alford, detention.
Good afternoon for the United States.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Jason Julian, Albert Berry III, and Anne Marie Ursini for the United States.
Good afternoon to all of you. For Mr. Alford.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. John Somerville, SLM, ERVILLE, for Mr. Alford.
Good afternoon, Mr. Somerville. Mr. Alford, are you on the line, sir?
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. We're scheduled for a detention hearing. The government ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Somerville, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
And finally, from Pretrial Services, Ms. Menarek, are you on the line?
Yes, Your Honor. Tiffany Menarek on behalf of Pretrial Services.
Thank you. And has the government received Ms. Menarek's report?
We have, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Somerville. Have you received Ms. Menarek's report?
Yes, Your Honor.
I smoke
All
hip hop
right.
live.
Finally, Mr. Alford, because of the CARES Act and the COVID pandemic, Congress has given courts authority to conduct these type of hearings, detention hearings, by video or telephone. In this case, would be by telephone, to limit exposure to the virus and to limit potential consequences of being transported in and out of a federal building and exposed to other individuals. Are you willing to proceed with this hearing by telephone, sir?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Somerville. Are you comfortable with the waiver of your client?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Julian, who from the government is going to handle the detention hearing?
I will, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Please proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. The government has moved for detention on serious risk of flight and also danger to the community under 3142 F1B because the maximum penalty of the count 1 and count 2 is death or life imprisonment, and serious risk of flight under 3142 F2A. On the latter, I note at the start that there is a presumption of detention in this case on the basis of risk of flight under 3142 E3B because counts 2, 5, and 7 allege a violation of 18 United States Code 924C. Ultimately, count 2 is 924J1, but built in the allegation of count 2 as a violation of 924C. So there's a presumption that that there's a risk of non-appearance in this case. Your Honor, I proffered to you at the start that all of the factors under 3142G weigh in favor of detention in this case. I'll just go through them in order. under 3142G1, the nature and circumstances of this offense involve a crime of violence. It's a heinous crime. It's a murder in count 1, an assault with a deadly weapon, 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon. One person was murdered, Mr. Weekly, who set forth an indictment. Victim 1 and victim 2 were also shot during the course of this murder. Mr. Weekly was fired at least 38 times in broad daylight, 4:26 p.m. on August 4th, standing in line outside of a business on Oak Street. Victim 1 and victim 2 were each also shot a number of times throughout the course of that assault. So the nature and circumstances of this offense, again, are a crime of violence, and crimes of violence in furtherance of a racketeering enterprise that's identified and described in an indictment as a racketeering enterprise that engages in acts of violence, including murder and assault. The weight of the evidence against Mr. Offord specifically is substantial. So Mr. Offord purchased a vehicle that was used in this murder and assault on or about July 28th from a dealership in the Chicagoland area. During a post-arrest interview, Mr. Offord acknowledged that there were pictures of him at the dealership and then next to the car that was used in the murder. Mr. Offord identified himself in the photos and the vehicle that was used as his vehicle. Mr. Offord acknowledged that it was his signature on the purchasing document for the vehicle. And I'll come back to this part when we get to history and characteristics of Mr. Offord, but Mr. Offord made some statements in the financing application for that vehicle that were not true with respect to his employment. And so days later, the dealership reached out to Mr. Offord to return the vehicle, which ultimately he did on August 4th, but TV. Not before using the vehicle in this murder and the assault of victims 1 and 2. So continuing on with the strength of the evidence, Mr. Offord acknowledged that there were still shots from a video that was taken. There was video that's relevant to this offense charge on August 4th, before the murder, after the murder, during the murder. Before the murder, Mr. Offord acknowledged again that it was him in those standing next to the vehicle that was used in the murder. I'm proffering now the vehicle video rather that shows the vehicle traveling from the location where Mr. Offord and others were congregating in the minutes before the murder, traveling to downtown. The vehicles that were used, including Mr. Offord's, were captured on CPD pod cameras, on CPD plate readers. The plate reader clearly identified the license plate as the vehicle registered to Mr. Offord, which he had purchased on or about July 28th, tracking from that location to down in the Gold Coast where this murder and assault took place. And
Yo, Wagwan YouTube. It's your boy Blue the Bear and I'm back.
Ursini for the United States.
Good afternoon to all of you.
Rico was born in...
Salute to the YouTube family. Subscribe to I Smoke Hip Hop Live. Salute.